Yes, and also we have Cyriac Roeding, actually, Steffi, because it's also, we are all Europeans, and Cyriac, come on stage, because here we can also give a big applause for Cyriac.
No problem at all.
Yes, and it's very important to get this outside-in perspective. Actually, Cyriac is is a German-American founder and investor, and it's great also to get this outside-in perspective on Europe. And it's very important to discuss this push for Europe, right? When I was young many years ago, actually, the European Union was formed and Europe grew together. And at that time, we said that Germany is too small, or France is too small, or Italy is too small in a globalized world. Today, it seems that even Europe as a whole is too small and maybe not competitive anymore. And I don't want to talk too much about the reasons, because it is well established. We need a push for Europe, and therefore we need people to push it and to move things and push the agenda forward. So as Steffi said, they put together an amazing panel. This is why I love this opportunity to discuss with people from politics, in entrepreneurship, venture capital, and science, right? And we want to explore how Europe can turn its diverse strength into a real powerhouse for innovation. And Eva Maydell, you are a member of the European Parliament, right? You are active in Brussels for more than 10 years. You have been awarded the New Technologies Award. You are co-chair of the European Parliament Digital and AI Intergroup. You are a passionate driver for technology and innovation. You played a significant role in the development of the AI Act. Last year, you spoke about that. Here, you are an integral part of this DLD community. You initiated the annual conference Regulation for Innovation in Brussels. You're a board member of the World Economic Forum's Digital Leader of Europe. But if you go back to your past, right, and don't look at reputation, don't look at impact. Is there any job you did, a job of joy you loved, you would like to secretly go back to?
Well, you missed an important part of my life that I believe formed me as a person, and this is studying in Rome and being a student in a beautiful and an inspiring place, which I think I miss, and I would like to go back because it links to my creativity and exploring the arts, and not just, you know, the work I do today. And that's one reason why I love DLD.
That's nice.
Because you managed to bring these different perspectives, and I'm so grateful to be invited again. And thank you, Stefan, and the whole team, really, for bringing us all together. Because this room and the inspiration I get from being here, it's very different than a plenary room in the European Parliament. And I think,
absolutely.
And I think, you know, the different points of view that we have here can contribute in a different way in my work. And I love being here, and I hopefully want to...
Great that you are back. And we have Fabian, Professor Dr. Fabian Theis. You're a real local hero, right? You are basically here at the largest place for AI research in health in Europe, and you are really creating world-class impact by top-notch science from Europe. You are head of the Computational Health Center at Helmholtz. It has 7 institutes, director of the Institute for Computational Biology. You're also chairing the Mathematical Modeling of Biological Systems program here at the Technical University of Munich, and you uncover the secrets of human cells with the use of AI. So if I get it right, by the Human Cell Atlas, right, one can map all the human cells within your body to get targeted diagnosis and treatment of diseases. And maybe you can call it, like for some engineers here, predictive maintenance for the body. Right? Is that,
I like that.
Yeah. And also for you, you are co-head of the Bayerische KI-Rat des Staatsministeriums Wissenschaft und Kunst, right? So many hats you're wearing, many things you're pushing, but also for you, if you could go back, is there any secret job of joy you did in the past?
Man, when I sort of thought a bit about, you know, when I was in high school, I completely hated biology and this type of things. I don't know how it was about you guys. It kind of depends maybe on the teacher. And then like my first job was, we had this in the past, CV, so you know I had to push a friend actually in his wheelchair for around for a year. And this sort of changed my perspective. And you start thinking, hey, maybe we can actually really make a contribution like that, maybe in science or maybe also building companies around that, right?
Yeah, and exactly, Cyriac Roeding, you're here. You are very engaged in pushing Germany and Europe to become really a tech leader. Again, right? Yesterday, you can read a great article that was launched in FAZ yesterday from Cyriac. Please have a look at that. And you bring in the expertise as entrepreneur and as investor, right? And you are also the outside-in view as German-American. You're based in Silicon Valley. You're co-founder and CEO of Earli. So this is like the practical application, you can say, in healthcare. By early cancer detection and treatment, you design programmable genetic constructs. So basically, you kind of convince the cancer to reveal itself and then to destroy itself, if I understand it correctly. Your work is based on research from Stanford. You're also co-founder of Roeding, diabetes type 2 reversal company. You're an investor. And before that, you also went to university here in Germany at KIT and also in Asia in Tokyo. And in between that, basically, you work for Roland Berger and McKinsey and Kleiner Perkins, but also for you. What is your secret true job of joy you ever had?
My secret is that when I was in high school, I was an exchange student in Texas, and I was a male cheerleader. And I ran the school flag on Friday nights across the football stadium. 20,000 people in a 50,000 people town showed up. It was the best job I've ever had. There were 15 girls and 7 guys. It doesn't get any better. And since then, my jobs really have only gone downhill.
That's very good. So now, Eva, you are pushing, as we said, the innovation landscape in Europe for so many years, right? Now we have a new presidency, we have a new commission. Do you see a push for Europe?
The short answer is yes, definitely. But I think we need to see and understand the backdrop of things and where Europe finds itself today. And I think where we are today is that we have a new US administration which works, from what we've seen, very closely with dominant tech firms, and they've teamed up towards a more protectionist political agenda. The other realities are that we have the so-called middle powers, such as Saudi Arabia, India, the EUEA, who are investing heavily in tech. The amount of investments are uncompared to the amount of investments in Europe. We also, of course, in this room all know the fast and unprecedented speed of the development of technologies. We are seeing flying AI, quantum computing. We are seeing also the race of who's gonna, and the competition of who's gonna develop the next generation of chips. So I think this backdrop is important to understand the pressure that's on Europe at the moment. And I think we need to be asking ourselves the question, basically, what do we do? On one hand, we can follow what the US is doing or what China is doing or the UAE is doing, but I don't think we should, to be honest. I think Europe has to find a model for developing tech in this new era in a different way, in a European way. And I think in a way today is the make it or break it moment. And some of us, as you said, I've been engaged on this topic for a number of years, but many of us in this room have been engaged on this topic for a number of years. What we need this time is a little bit different way of taking decisions and the speed with which we're taking decisions. Why is that? It's because of the backdrop. And I will give you 5 very brief ideas of how we can do that. First of all, in my circles, I very often hear we need the next tech European champion, or we need to be the ones creating a similar model to the open AI models. I don't think that's the answer necessary. I think Europe is strong in its industry. Europe is strong in its ecosystem. I think we have to use tech to adopt it instead of necessarily always aiming at creating it, which we of course do and we should continue doing. But I think the sort of question we need to be asking is different. What we have seen from the past is that both in theory and in practice, the actual champions are those that are able to adopt and embrace those innovations. And I think we need to be much more focused in thinking about that. We can look back and see how the UK was an industrial tech power, but the one that became the real powerhouses were Germany and the US, because they figured and found a way of how to implement those technologies. They modernized their economies by implementing those breakthroughs. So I would like we in Europe to do that way better and way more targeted than we are currently doing it. Second point is related very much on how to achieve the first point and to the backdrop, global partnerships. We will not have access to some of those technologies if this protectionist agenda will evolve. So we have to strike global partnership to make sure we have access to all those technologies. Of course, I'm not advocating, as a third idea, I'm not advocating that we abandon developing technologies in Europe, but we need to find smarter ways of how to invest. Our European startups, of course, still need more capital, and I'm a strong advocate for that and have a couple of ideas. If there's time, I'll share them later, but also purpose. It has to be a little bit more targeted. And it's time to make that connection between the startups, scale-ups, and the industry, which I believe is lacking. And with some of you, we had that discussion a few months ago in Brussels. Fourth point is regulation, because Europe is known for its regulatory grandeur, let's put it this way. I think we need to, on one hand, rethink it, and on the other hand, better explain it. Why is this? Because right now, the way European regulation is mostly used for is people saying that we are imposing censorship or fines. No, it's not about fines. It's about protecting the public interest, and I think we have a mission to better explain that to our partners. And finally, I think we need a better unified tech ecosystem, that cutting-edge technology reaching the industry, and that goes through a fully functioning single and common market. And there we need to remove the hurdles for the startups and the scale-ups in order to be able to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. And now, Cyriac, I would like to hear your perspective from the outside-in perspective, from the United States, maybe looking to Europe. Where could Europe improve, and what key levers could politicians pull to really unleash this wave of innovation in Europe?
Well, I'd like to suggest maybe we take a step back and think about why we're even talking about this. I think it's about we should think about our grandchildren and our children. Because if we take a step forward and think, yesterday we heard, when Steffi got her award for 20 years of DLD, that we lived in the Stone Ages in 2005. Remember that? Guess what people will say about 2025 and 2024, in 2045. In 2045, 2025 will seem like the Stone Ages, which means right now is Stone Age. Which means right now is what we're defining the future will look like. We are all used to living in a Wohlfahrtsgesellschaft, in a high-quality standard of living society, right? Well, if we want our children and our grandchildren to also live in that kind of world, the time to invest is now. Because if we don't do that now, in 2045, we will be the ones living in the Stone Ages and not the other people elsewhere. Or, alternatively, more likely, we will be import world champions and not export world champions of the world's best technologies coming from the United States, from Israel, from China. Do we want to be that? If we don't want to be that, the time to make decisions is now. And I would posit that within 5 years, this powerhouse called Europe, it's almost like a sleeping giant right now, can wake up, stand up, and be one of the top 3 innovation hubs in the world after the United States and China. That's my belief, and I think we can do this together by pulling the right levers. We can talk about those.
Cool, cool. Thank you, Cyriac. And Fabian, that's the ambition, and we always say we are already world leader in research, right? But we are not world leader in impact, company, startup creation. What role must Europe's scientific community play?
Yeah, I mean, you know, innovation, of course, starts with a problem and an idea, right? And then we write papers about it, but, you know, I mean, as you say, right, innovation comes afterwards and often taken up by different places. So there's already ongoing things happening. You know, within Bavaria, for example, you know, what we do within this AI Council, we sort of guide politicians to sort of discuss about investments. We have this biosphere set up that you might have heard about within this high-tech agenda that maybe Markus Blum was mentioning yesterday already. You know, there's massive investments in AI and, you know, sort of in this whole triangle of AI, in compute, in data, and in algorithms. So these things are happening. How do you take this to the next level, sort of to really bring this to European innovation? I think it's then this typical mindset question that I think we've been sort of discussing quite a bit, and, you know, it might be not the standard way yet here to think about impact, not just scientifically, but level higher. We've been doing within the Helmholtz Association, this is Europe's largest research organization, we've been discussing these points. And we set up already 7 years ago what we call Helmholtz AI, which I coordinate. We had that mission of, and I think you mentioned authoritarian leaders, right? So we call it democratize access to AI. So, you know, at least sort of bring it into the labs and then sort of get those labs to then also drive innovation. And then maybe the last point, within sort of on the European level, we have this network of machine learning scientists called Earli, where sort of a strong part of that is actually transfer. And thanks for kind of supporting these things. This new network called Elias is where we sort of bring together some of these innovation hubs, sort of including you guys and others, to then sort of drive some of these transitions. So I think this 2045.
And Fabian, I'm very curious because I think this is very challenging to bring together a network that really has impact. How do you do that on a European level?
In the end, it's always individual. So what we do, is of course money, and we kind of want to have more on that. And I think you say it's time to invest, sort of give us in sort of ideally sort of a very sort of blue sky type of setting to people, and they come up with the ideas, and they have that original drive and not sort of some superimposed drive. The second thing is, of course, you know, we bring clever researchers that sort of have their own type of topics, but the two interfaces together, and then suddenly, you know, these new things start. So I think not most innovative science happens at these interfaces, and I think that's also where these new inventions come from.
And Cyriac, you mentioned, I really love this picture of the sleeping giant. So what specifically should we do to wake up?
Yeah, so first, I think the most important thing is to understand where to invest. Because it just doesn't make sense to just throw money at something. Yeah. So the 10 main areas, there are 10 key things, I think, that everybody is probably in sync, more or less, maybe 70, 80% of it. It's obviously artificial intelligence, everybody knows that. There is biotech. There's fusion technology, there's robotics, there's quantum technology, there are vertical electrical taxis, there is healthcare, there is green tech, there is defense technology. So robotics, so those are the 10 main areas. So let's first define not to invest in the same things everybody's already investing in, but into the next horizon, which is going to be relevant in 2045. That the time to go in is now. So that's the areas. Now, what do we need to get there? 3 things, I think. Talent are the drivers of the whole game. Those are people, humans, extremely exceptional scientists, really strong entrepreneurs, the ones that create the breakthroughs. That's usually a really small group of people that are just very different and weird. You know, those are the people you need. Number 2, startups. And when I say startups, I mean world-class startups. The ones that are dominating the world stage and not the ones that are playing local small games, the big players. And number 3 is capital, lots of it. So going through the 3, if you want. Do you want to go through those?
Yes.
So first, first on the talent side, just a couple of ideas I want to throw out, just to sort of stimulate your thinking. Imagine we could create, in 10th grade, across Europe, a subject in school, which is called startup. And that subject is attended by everybody, and everybody can come up with amazing ideas, business ideas, develop a business plan, learn what that even means, and then participate in a startup competition, and the best idea of the local region the school is in actually gets funded. And guess what? The developers of the idea get shares in that company. And most of them will fail. That's okay. It's not the point. The point is to expose young people to the idea of being an entrepreneur. Imagine if Europe all of a sudden had more trained entrepreneurs than the entire world together elsewhere, because we institutionalized it in our educational system from the ground up. Imagine what kind of coolness factor that would have, how people would want to join that, how they would feel about it, how maybe many students wouldn't care perhaps, but the 3 or 4% that really loved it, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to join large companies? They're going to start their own companies. So that's number one. Number two, let's talk about startups. So on the startup side, it's not that Europe is lacking startups. Europe has startups. The problem is that very few startups play at a world level. Very few of them become 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 billion startups. How do we change that? Well, we've got a resource that is almost untapped. And I know this because I happen to have been in Silicon Valley for almost 20 years now. There are networks of European entrepreneurs around the world, in Silicon Valley, in Canada, in China, in Israel, who have built successful startups and raised billions of dollars. These are Europeans. Not everybody cares about Europe who is a European. I do. And I know many others do too. That's why I'm here. We want to help. Use us as mentors who have done it before, who can give advice, who can give access to capital and know how to build and scale companies. That's a huge resource that Europe is not tapping into. And create the European network of entrepreneurship. So that's just an idea for the startup side. And then the third one is capital. So capital is the key. Essentially, think of it as the domino in a chain of dominoes. Imagine if you had $500 billion for Europe. What do you think that first big, massive $500 billion domino would do if we kicked it over? When there's money, everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to be part of it and participate. So let me give you an example that this is not made up. Where does this money come from? What I'm going to propose is a really important thing, I think, for Europe, is a sovereign wealth fund of Europe. Yeah. And I proposed it for Germany already. I think it's very important that the government is participating in the upside of startup companies, which can pay it back to society when they're successful over time. And in the beginning, they pump the money into the startups to help them grow. And I'll give you a couple of data points.
Before we, because I think otherwise we are running out of time. Yeah. And I would really like to know also on the European level, right? I mean, it sounds amazing, sovereign wealth fund, and you said yes, we should do that. How do we stand in Europe, funding-wise, venture capital-wise, from the Commission and also from private capital?
Let me bring some pragmatism from a European perspective on the capital part particularly, and also on the part of talent. We'll start with your first point on talent. You're probably one of the first people to speak about imagine an education where at 10th grade, we can have startup classes. Everyone speaks how we need to change our educational system, but very few people give concrete examples. From a European perspective, the first thing you would hear is, we don't have jurisdiction to decide what is being done.
Sure.
I've been hearing this for 10 years, and for 10 years, me being part of the bubble, have been trying to challenge it and saying, yes, but how are we going to achieve the big goals and the big aims for Europe, not for a single country, if we do not do something to change it? So this leads me to a broader point, which is called leadership. And the same thing we need it for the educational system and to retain, to attract, and to develop that talent, but we also need it when it comes to capital. It's fragmented, and it's fragmented since we know the European Union exists. It's the one area where, for more than 10 years, I'm hearing how we need to develop a capital markets union, and we're just talking about it. I stopped advocating for this a year ago because I feel like a fool going to panels and say how we need to develop it, and yet we never do. However, I started working on a similar idea, close to the one you suggest, on a sovereign wealth fund. We've called it as a project name Pioneer Fund, and we are currently working with the leadership of the European Commission to try and push that idea and develop it in the next year, which I assume is very similar to what you're saying.
Is it 500 billion?
It's a bit less, that's why it's a Pioneer Fund, but it aims to invest in this exact type of crucial 10 areas that we can lead in the future. We'll end up with leadership. If you do not have the right leaders in place, the people that can grasp and understand that we need to A, see the bigger picture, and B, not talk about the problems of the past, but how we can lead in the future, will be extremely difficult to bring these projects ahead. So we need national leadership and leadership in Europe to make those ideas come true. So maybe a final point for me, because probably we don't have a lot of time. I agree the momentum is now, and the startup and capital community have been active, but you need to be even more visible and more active, because there is a momentum, you need to grasp it, you need to own it, and you need to keep this topic high on the political agenda.
Thank you so much. And really, unfortunately, we are really running out of time, so I will ask one last question, and I would like you to give a short answer. So if we look to DLD's 25th birthday, right? It's very soon, it's in 2030. In which area will Europe be an envied world leader? Where will we have made it? Maybe Cyriac.
In the 10 areas I outlined.
In all of them. I like it.
Was that short enough?
I like it. Very good. Fabian.
I'm going to be more specific. So for me, it's going to be one thing in the health AI. I think next big medicine will be RNA-based medicines, and I think AI is going to play a big role here, and we have a strong ecosystem for that. So I hope for that.
Thank you. Eva.
Well, I spoke about leadership. So how about something different that will have the sort of leadership that would get us bring those ideas to life?
I love
and
that.
Stay future positive as the hashtag.
I love that, and I love this passion, and I love having you here on stage and all the people here at DLD, because we really need people to really push the agenda. There are so many initiatives, but important is, as I think, as we discussed, is really to start soon, be very fast and efficient about that, and wake up the sleeping giant and transform Europe from an already world leader in research into a world leader in action, business creation, startup creation. Thank you so much to the great panelists and to all of you.
Well done, man.